and we're gonna be out of time for the other thing. So let me just close this and bring up the next window. Where are you?
So now on the dial, is that I know you created a video on this, and you're probably going to show us the example. Is that something that will, people will be able to get access to the source code, or what's the?
Yeah, yeah. So it's just a real simple piece of source code. I left it real basic so that it's the whole example here. The code that actually creates the dial, you see it right here on the screen, is it's less than 100 lines of code with spaces and blanks and not even very well formatted here. So let me just take out the extra blanks. And it's really quite straightforward if you just take it step by step. It's going to look complicated when people first look at it, when they get in here and go, whoa, dial left, insert, dial right, half dial. I give up. Don't give up. Okay? Go through it step by step and think about what's going on, and I will explain what's going on. First of all, this is not a dynamically scalable dial in the sense that Jason's is. It is scalable, and it works perfectly well. I actually used a trick that I learned from Sergey to make that work, but it does not generate the masks dynamically. I have a single mask that I have provided, and so that's part of this discussion, is you can change the mask on your own. If you use the mask that I provided, it's perfectly suitable, can be used in a number of scenarios, but you can get interesting other effects if you provide your own artwork. So let me get to the file, the folder that has the artwork, and I'll explain the bits and pieces first so that you understand what's going on. So first of all, a dial timer, a dial of any kind like this that basically progresses from 0% to 100% is one of those sort of mysterious things that people try to do, and they're like, how do they have trouble wrapping their head around it. But when in fact it's very simple to achieve using masking. What you're seeing here is basically the green circle in the background in this moving bit is this image right here, back PNG, and it's just a white circle that I colorize. So that's the first layer of the dial. Then we have the dial portion itself, and what I've done is I've created a display group that contains, let me find it, this image. And what it is, it's half of a dial. It looks exactly the same as the last image. I just cut it in half, and I kept the left half. Then, because I put it in a group, what I did was I created a mask, and you'll see that the mask is basically the same exact artwork with a black background. So if you were to compare the last image I showed you, which was this half dial business, it's exactly the same image. What that allows me to do is I put the white image with the transparent portion here in a group at 0, 0, and I put a mask on the group. I create a mask and I set the mask on the group, and then as long as the image is within the mask area, you can see it. But if I rotate the image, what that effectively does is it takes part. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. Sorry, I was trying to rotate there. If I take the image and I rotate it to the right, this portion right here on the right side gets masked off. So you're only going to be able to see 1/4 of the wedge. So the more I rotate it, the less of that wedge is available. And here's where the trick comes in. My dial is nothing more than two sets of groups where there's half of a wedge in one side, half of a wedge in the other side, and then I use a mask on one side, I use a mask on the other side, and I flip the x-axis of the mask so the other side is masked like this. So we have one side masked like this, one side masked like this, and then as I rotate each of the half wedges within their own groups, each of the groups being masked, it looks like the wedge is shrinking. Now, I'll demonstrate this by turning off the masking. So what I've done here is on line 48 of the code is where the set mask occurs for the left side. And then on line 63, where is it? The mask is set for the other side. So I turn off the masks. I'm going to reload this code. And now you can see what we've got here is two wedges that have been rotated. So if you look at the images on the top, it's clear to see that there are two wedges that are merely rotating. So first one wedge rotates and it stops. Then the next one rotates and it stops. And it's a little bit hard to see that. So let me turn off one wedge at a time. Turn off the right side. Now there's nothing going on, and then suddenly the wedge starts to rotate. Why does it rotate? Because there's a piece of code that says, oh, I got to the 50% mark, it's time to rotate the right wedge. So 0 to 50, rotate the left wedge, which seems counterintuitive. 50 to 100, rotate the right wedge. And that
I
really
like the way you're doing this because it's over my method that we discussed a few months ago. It's a lot fewer display objects, which is great.
But you'll still run into the issue of depth on groups, so you'll have to be careful if you're using a scroll view or any of the widgets like that. Inserting this might create too many layers of groups or too many masking layers.
Yeah, it's a maximum of 3, I believe.
Yeah. So
this uses 2 mask layers.
Since you're already using 2 here, throwing it into a group or a scroll view might exceed your number of layers.
I've been thinking a lot about that, and I think actually that we are misinterpreting what that is.
Yeah, I think here you've only got 1 layer of depth on this because they're independent of one another.
It's per group. It's per group masking, and in which case I've only got 1 per group. So
Right now, the best solution for such sort of dial would be a custom shader. It would be, I think, easy to write in Corona right now.
Easy. Okay, I disagree with you. Maybe I'm not.
This is a nice simple solution.
It would be easier if all you were doing was a base color and the dial color. But what you can't maybe see here is this also has an independent border, and you can add more content to the dial halves to give it all kinds of details. You could put more layers. What people could do here,
you can transform alpha channel in the shader.
No, okay. I challenge you, sir, to produce an example that I can look at. It's hard for me to say yes or no to that without.
No, I'm with both of you, believe it or not, because as I've been struggling with my own, where the problem with mine is, what I like about mine is it does dynamically generate a mask, which is great. You don't, as a packaged module, it's great because you just need this one little Lua file. But the problem with dynamically generating a mask is when you start getting into supporting multiple device resolutions and you're using dynamic scaling, all of a sudden, that divisible by 4 image that you've got is not necessarily exporting as masks have to be divisible by 4. There are very specific requirements for it, and it can be tricky device by device to ensure that it's always going to work when you're dynamically making that. And working with shaders is something that, if and when I find the time, I hope to sort of experiment with, because I think it could be a way of, again, still having a module that works without needing to include a PNG, but it's something I have not yet fully wrapped my brain around the concept of custom shaders yet, and I think that's my deficiency. I don't think it's terribly complicated. I just haven't put in the time yet.
I would have to. Go ahead.
That's not
good. I like it. I think it's a cool shader.
You would probably end up doing a different shader for each variation of the effect. You could add the border by doing a vertex shader that stretched the geometry out. Mm-hmm. And in the shader, you could draw a clear color on stuff you didn't want to appear. So it's doable. It's just you'd have to do one for each variation. And
Yeah, I'm not going to say you couldn't do this with a shader. It's just a part of the problem here is
Well, for most people, I think.
most basic usage of this example.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think for most people, shaders might be a little more advanced for them.
Another improvement that can you use in Ed's case is using very small rectangular mask, like I did in my dynamic mask example, but I did it I think 2 by 2 pixels, white rectangle, and you can make it just a half of it, so you can only 2 pixels are white and other 2 pixels are black, and you can scale it to the whole image, and it would look the same, almost.
I agree and I disagree. I used your technique, but I did not start small. I don't agree that you can create a round shape.
Yeah, no.
Not round, only rectangle. You don't round.
Hey, Ed.
I did use. Hold on, just 1 second. I did use his technique, which is the setting and unsetting the magnification texture filter, because that was absolutely required. Otherwise, you got a visual artifact on the scene.